I'm Val May from TRP Recruitment, and we're here today to speak to Sophie, who is an experienced design manager, director, and currently design consultant, to see where do designers go forward coming out of the pandemic. Sophie, over to you.
Hi, Val.
Hi.
Everybody. I think that it's definitely not, a one-size-fits-all scenario, in terms of what designers can do. But if I kind of talk, first of all, about graduates and junior designers, obviously there's going to be graduates coming out. Pardon?
No, I just said yes, sorry.
Oh, yeah, so obviously there's going to be graduates coming out of uni, and into a very frightening looking world. And, also some junior designers that may have been COVID casualties, or maybe, worried about moving forward in their career. And I think that there's a couple of things that I would advise. One is, there's the innovations in technology, which I think immediately aren't going to be important, but I think going forward will be. So for the younger designers and the graduates, the ones that are really tech savvy, not old fogies like me who can't even do a CAD. So for the younger designers, I think it's going to be really, really important to familiarize themselves with 3D design, right. What that looks like. I mean, I know one of the companies that I was consulting and working with, they are using 3D design as a tool.
And what is 3D design within fashion?
So the one that they're using is, I think it's a system called CLO, C-L-O. But the only downside with this one is that it needs to be done in conjunction with a pattern cutter, because the patterns are the things that render the 3D design, basically. So obviously you get a designer to create the design, the pattern cutter to create the pattern, and then it goes back to the designer to work on the CLO system to create a 3D rendered model. And it's very, very interesting what you can do. They can walk along a catwalk, they can spin around, there's movement and fluidity to the designs. And I know that remotely, particularly with this particular company, they're using it as a kind of marketing tool, essentially. And, I think it's going to be really important to use for print and pattern to begin with, maybe, for anybody who works in soft or in jersey, I can see that as being a really important tool to sell in the print. Now, obviously, if you have to use a pattern cutter for every single shape, if you're working on print, you could literally have a bank of shapes and then you export your print onto the 3D shape, and it would be very easy to color change, to change the scale, and to see the print come alive. And I think that is something that I believe will be happening almost immediately, I would think, especially if print studios and various other print manufacturers or suppliers or whatever, it would be a very easy way of selling in something remotely.
So you would advise and recommend that if graduates or junior designers and designers haven't had that experience or have learnt that technology, to become au fait and upskill effectively.
I think so. I think, like I said, that the one where you have to use a pattern cutter, that's going to be more difficult for somebody who's literally a graduate, or somebody, a junior designer, or even a designer who's looking for work, because you have to do it in conjunction with a pattern cutter, and that's not going to be possible for many people. However, I do believe that there are other systems and other software that can be used where you don't need the pattern cutter. I'm not 100% sure. When I first started in the industry, I don't think there was even computers. No, there wasn't. There were no computers. So I'm a bit of an old fogey technophobe. So I don't know exactly, but my advice is look into it, because I do think that it will be, there's another very positive side of this as well, that it reduces waste. The amount of samples that are produced every season, collection per category, per brand or retailer, the amount of sample wastage is obscene, so hopefully it will help with that as well in the future, and will help retailers and manufacturers to be more sustainable.
And would you advise that those designers, junior designers, sort of update and their portfolio in terms of, just making sure that they are on trend, so that, should a role come in, they're good to go, and, they're current? What I'm finding sometimes is that a lot of the designers, they've been made redundant or furloughed or whatever, and they've just not done anything with their portfolio, and it's just having to tell them that this is what they need to do.
I think that's a given anyway. I would think, definitely. I mean, even when I would always update my portfolio, and just as a matter of course. And also I would, before any role or any interview that I may have, I would tailor exactly what I was taking to that interview, specifically to that job, to make it relevant. And I think that people with less experience, that's going to be harder, but you can of course update your CV, update your portfolio, do an online portfolio, look at what's happening currently, and maybe, if you're not working, I would think that to rather than
time to do it,
to do nothing, I would be doing something, definitely. So I do think that just generally updating, refreshing, is always a good thing to do. I'm not a great fan of project-based work for interviews. I think that it can be abused, that system, and particularly now, I think that that's going to be, we're going to have, it's going to be a bit of a bun fight for roles that come up. I'm sure that as a recruiter, you must be inundated with CVs for every role. And certainly what I'm seeing on LinkedIn is, lots of complaints about recruiters not getting back to people and blah, blah, blah. So I can imagine that the industry is pretty inundated at the moment. So obviously, from one point of view, you've got to have something that stands out, which is a CV that maybe is interactive somehow, or, just refresh so that it's relevant.
Well, here at TRP, we do make an effort to get back to everybody. It is difficult, and as you say, there are a lot of people on the marketplace, but we do endeavour to get back to as many people as we possibly can. And as you quite rightly say, people, sort of complain that they don't hear back, but TRP, we do endeavour to do that. Moving forward, senior designers and design directors like yourself, how is the situation, would you say, for people like yourself going forward?
Well, I think that before we get to the people like myself, there is also going to be a number of people who are going to be looking for work that have less than 20 years experience, the more kind of middle experienced designers. I think this is going to be where the most competition is going to be for roles. You know, these are guys that have been in the industry, they've got a certain amount of years experience. And again, I think just literally what I said before about refreshing your portfolio, updating it, making sure that you've got something which is going to make you stand out. And also, as I understand it, and I don't know, you'd be able to help me with this, Val, is that is a lot of recruiters, or because there's so many applications, they use buzzwords or keywords that kind of sort the men out from the boys as such, you know, so that if you are using certain keywords in your cover letter or in the first I guess paragraph of your CV,
Yes,
that makes some people stand out than others. I'm not sure whether that's true or not. So I
would always recommend for any role that a candidate would put a profile of themselves, of their skill set, of their experience and knowledge as a profile on their CV. So that effectively will sort of demonstrate the level of experience that they have, the knowledge that they've gained, and as well as the experience. And that will enable HR line managers to straight away be able to get almost an overall picture before zoning into companies where they've worked and how the experience, etc., has broken down. That is something I would always recommend to candidates.
Okay, well, that kind of leads me on to the more senior design directors, you know, the people that have been in the industry for a long time. You know, that I would question, and I'm going to question you on this as well, is that, you know, if you haven't got, say you've been in the industry for 30 years, 25, 30, 35 years, whatever, but recently you haven't been in retail, maybe you've been consulting, maybe you've been having a career break or whatever, that would put off an HR team from hiring. I would imagine, you know, because you don't have within the last 2 to 5 years experience of working in a retailer. You may have been working for a manufacturer, etc., etc. So there's lots of things that would maybe prevent people with more experience from even getting past the HR teams. And, you know, that I think, and I'm, you know, hoping that this is going to be the case, hopefully will be something which would be more of an advantage, you know, to have more experience and have rounded experience and have a broad variety of experience. Because as we come out of this COVID, it's not just about designers thinking differently, it's about the industry thinking differently completely. And, you know, so they're going to need people with experience. They're going to need the experienced fashionistas, if you like, you know, to be able to use and pull on their experience to be able to make decision making. You know, it's not
what I would say again is, if you have been consulting for that period of time, whether it be a manufacturer or a retailer or a brand, is to, certainly with manufacturers, specify which retailers the manufacturer that you've been consulting for, mention who they are, in order for the clients that you're approaching can identify the retailers to see whether or not it's going to fit in with what they are looking for. So that's quite important, because what we find a lot on CVs is that, yes, veterans like yourself have worked within consultancy, but they don't actually specify who and what brands they've been designing for. So again, that is also very, very important.
Yeah, no, exactly. I totally agree. For any of the more senior designers and senior veterans of the industry, the OAPs in the industry, I hope that there's going to be like a new, almost like a new role or industry, if you like, because these, those of us, or those of the designers who have got a certain amount of experience, and like I said, I certainly believe that industry will need the more experienced people. They may not want to pay a salary for these people because, I'm saying these people because, it's a group of people. I'm sure that there's lots and lots of seniors who are out of work at the moment. So is there, and this is a question to the industry, I believe that there is a need for what I would call, the employment of creative trend strategists. These are people who, they understand fashion trend, absolutely, but this coming out of COVID, it's not just going to be about trend. It's not going to just be about what's the colour of the season or what is the move on of the ruffled blouse or whatever. This is going to be about consumer trends as well, and people who have got the overall experience will understand the difference between fashion trend and consumer trends, but will be able to merge the two things to create this role, I guess, of a creative trend strategist. I do believe that retail is going to need people who are thinkers, who understand and going to be able to help guide a business to the right design strategy. And within that, the shift of categories within the business as well. I don't think that we can go back to what it was initially. I think that, there's certain retailers that would have had things like, for example, a workwear category and an occasion wear category and formal wear as well as casual wear. And I think that can't work again in the same way.
No,
so they're going to need people who understand.
People are working remotely, so they're not going to be sitting at home in their occasion wear and stupid and booted, unless it's a formal Zoom call. But that's highly unlikely. But yes, you're right.
Oh, yeah.
Things have to move forward. And talking about moving forward, what are your thoughts on sustainability?
Oh, okay. So I am obviously, I believe 100% in sustainability, but I also believe in the consciousness, in the thought process of the consumer. And that doesn't necessarily just mean that they're buying something because it's sustainable. I would advise that if anybody is buying into a brand or, a department within a retailer that is saying it's sustainable, you also have to dig deeper into the transparency of the production of that as well. Is that brand ethical? Do they treat their manufacturers ethically? Because I've had some experience of where working for a brand which is sustainable but is not ethical. So if you're squeezing your suppliers for the cheapest possible price, is that a sustainable / ethical practice? And I think that sustainability is obviously super important, and we touched on that earlier with regards to the waste of samples, and that can go back to the retailer. How many samples do you actually need? In my experience, and I've had 40 years experience in the industry, that you can go from some retailers / brands who have very minimal sampling because they're very clear about what it is that they want. They're clear about who their customer is. They're clear about what it is that they're looking for. And then you've got other retailers who literally have like a splatter gun effect, you know, where they'll call in as many samples as possible because they don't know, and because
And they
potentially
still can't make up
maybe,
their minds in
and
terms
they still can't make it, which is why, yeah, you know, so, and I think that's down to strategy, that's down to process of how you buy. You know, do you really need, how many people do you need to make a decision on whether or not you're buying a pink t-shirt? You know, I'm just being brutally honest here, you know, because there's some retailers who are doing better than others who make very good decisions, and then that goes back to they need to hire the right people who know how to make decisions. That's it, you know. And so with sustainability, yes, you know, massive fan. Just make sure that it is that you know, the ethics behind it are as important. You know, it's not just about a sustainable fabric. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not just about.
Quite important that they have to sort of show that footprint from, you know, sampling through to final product going into store.
I mean, I think that is something that is or can be important. It doesn't have to be transparently shown, you know, like certain people like Everlane, for example, who show their suppliers, they show the footprint and various other things. I don't think that everybody needs to do that. But what I do feel is that, you know, you just need to be sure that it's ethically produced. You know, and yeah, so I also think there's other kind of conscious ways of, you know, attracting the consumer. I think that, you know, the amount of, certainly what we've seen during this year, you know, social causes, you know, particularly racial injustice, you know, is that something that we can do as within the industry? You know, when I say do, we probably already do it, but what I mean is there something that we can do to help within our industry? You know, is there something where you can donate via purchasing, for example, a certain percentage of this product goes to, you know, a racial cause or a social cause? Yeah. And, you know, there's definitely less is more. You know, considered consumption, that's also something which is conscious within the consumer. I don't know how many people have purchased during this pandemic. I certainly know many people who have edited their wardrobe during this pandemic. Absolutely. And thought, I don't need this. And then that gives rise to another industry, which is, you know, rental of clothing, pre-loved clothing. You know, they do, you know, there's lots and lots of data based on the fact that secondhand and pre-loved is going to take over fast fashion. And I don't see that as being a bad thing at all. And that's going back to, okay, what does that look like? You know, it's not just a simple matter of donating or putting a box next to the tills where you can get, you know, money back to spend on more polyester. You know what I mean? You know, yeah. Because there's certain retailers that do offer a little bin by the side of the, you know, and so is that sustainable? It's an act. Do you know what I mean? You know, it's maybe not so much about, I mean, it's helping, but then what happens to all that polyester? You know, I'm just being honest, you know. So I do believe that there's the, you know, the conscious consumer, and then there's other consumers that don't care. You know, there's other ones that really just want to buy something new, you know. So it's how you balance that. Just look into the brand.
Okay, Sophie, well, thank you very much for that. It's been very enlightening, and no doubt we'll catch up again and talk about another topic, but thank you very, very much. And I'm sure that our designers and candidates will benefit from this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Val.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye. Bye-bye.